Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Now today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, a little bit of a throwback to something that we used to do on the channel a couple of years ago. We're bringing back the Celtic Football Club Q&A with Ryan 118. We're going to be answering questions in relation to the crisis that Celtic currently find themselves in. The fact that we're only 12 weeks away from the Champions League qualifiers for next season, and there seems to be nothing in place to sort out what has been a shambles this year. We're off the back of a 4-1 loss to Rangers yesterday. Things are a mess at the moment. Let's talk about everything that has to change, everything that we may expect to see over the next few weeks. If you want to be involved with future things like this, you know what to do. Follow me on Twitter. Let's get into the intro. So I put this tweet up because I didn't really know what to do today. I was like, I could do the back pages and talk more about the game yesterday. I could sit down and rant about the board. I could sit and rant about the team performance a little bit further. I wanted to hold off on the podcast for now. So I was like, what do I do? And I was like, well, let's get you guys involved. Let's get the people, the subscribers and Celtic fans involved to have their chance to ask some questions on the channel. Now, there's a lot of things to talk about heading into this rebuild, and a lot of things to talk about in consideration with yesterday's game and everything else that's happened over the past few months. So I feel like by getting you guys to send them some questions, then we'll be able to talk a little bit more about different things and literally just kind of lay out everything that's wrong with Celtic at the moment. That's the idea of this video. As I said, if you want to get involved with future versions of this, or you like this, then let me know in the comments below. Follow me on Twitter. And I'm sorry if your question doesn't make this video. I've had over 60 comments at the moment, and it's a 10-minute video, so I've got to try and squeeze them in. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into this and talk about what is, you know, a very weird, complex and depressing time to be a Celtic fan. Who can take the sunrise? The Candyman can. So Connor Carr has sent in the first question of the episode. He says, do you think that we should play the young lads like Caramel, Dembele and the rest trying to break into the first team for the rest of the season? It could show us what we could implement into the squad next year. Well, I've been saying this for weeks. If you've been listening to the podcast, I have been under the impression that these guys should be getting as many minutes as possible, and that included the Rangers game yesterday. Scott Brown, for example, is not going to be here next season. Odsonne-Edouard, maybe a little more leeway there because of the quality he does possess, but he might not be here next season. A lot of guys in this team, El Yunusi, Kenny, players that are on loan, that are in this team, and some are much more deserving than others, but you know, we should be really giving these young guys a chance. We need to see them, we need to evaluate them further. Ismaila Soro, I've been raving about Soro whenever I've had the chance to, when I've seen him play, but we need to see more from him. We have to get more, in case we're basing our evaluation on right now off the fact that he was looking good in a very bad team. What if he is not as good? Now I'm under the impression he will be a good player, but what if that's the situation? Caramel, Dembele, we should be doing everything we can to influence him to stay as long as possible at Celtic, both for the club's best interest and his. But instead, we're sitting playing players like Christie, who's no guarantee of being here. We're playing players in the middle of the park like Brown, when we could be switching up the formation. There's so many different players that deserve to be playing. We've got so many loaned out. There's a backlog of players who should be in getting chances. We need to know who's going to be good enough to be playing next season. And certainly names like Caramel, Dembele, Ismaila Soro, they're the first ones that come to mind. They should be in the team. We've got 2 games left now. It seems a bit pointless. These 2 games are going to tell us nothing. It's going to be dead energy. It's just going to be, I think, boring to watch. We should have been doing this way back since, you know, longer than even when Rangers secured the title. But yet we've waited this long. It's pathetic. Chris Paul, aka Mr. Paul, has asked, where did it go wrong? Not replacing Forster, Bolingoli not having our first left back all season and having 3 games postponed, meaning we're playing catch up, Forrest and Julian out for most of the season, 5 players missing for the first derby, Beaton's red card, Dubai. There's a lot of things that Chris Paul has put in there. He's said, you know, there's multiple reasons, and of course there's multiple reasons for why things have went wrong this season, but in my eyes, everything that went wrong dates all the way back to May of 2019. Neil Lennon being given the job in the Hampden Showers after the Scottish Cup win. It was complete and utter negligence from the board. And I know, and I'll be first to hold my hands up and admit that I was praising Neil Lennon the following season. We went to Rome, we beat Lazio, we won 9 in a row, we won the League Cup, we went to the Scottish Cup final and all the rest of it, all this stuff. You know, I praised Neil Lennon for this. And it was a bit naive too, but that's where it went wrong. We all knew that day, or the majority of us knew. People with a brain and could see it coming knew that day he shouldn't have got the job, and he did. and he kind of made up for it. And those successes of the following season disguised the fact that there was a declining team there, and it was a team that needed a professional of the highest standards, a Brendan Rodgers type manager. We let go of that to hire Neil Lennon. That is where it went wrong. Peter Law and his negligence, and Dermot Desmond, their negligence at the top, and their cheap options, and their all pal friendships, that is where it went wrong for Celtic. Nothing to do with this season. Yes, of course it plays a factor, I'm not denying that, but that is where it all started, and it can all be brought back to that, because all these problems have came from that situation. Before we go any further, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Simple, subscribing costs absolutely nothing. You get all the content for free. It's just the simplest thing to do to keep up with the world of me and Celtic. And other bits of Scottish football and other things from time to time, but mostly me and Celtic. It's free. Remember, it's free. Subscribe. Leon asks who should be captain next season. Well, I think it pretty much answers itself. I think it's going to be Callum McGregor. I would be surprised if it's not Callum McGregor, but I think that everything should be thrown towards Christopher Ajer in order to try and convince him to stay at Celtic, and that includes the captaincy for me. Now, I know Ajer yesterday was a bit questionable. There was one moment in the game where he ducks out the road of a shot, which led to a goal for Rangers. Later on in the game, tried a no-look pass when you're 3-1 down, but then again, you still see positives from out of the run, the commanding run through the middle of the park, and just throughout the season, he has been our player of the year. We should prioritise trying to keep guys like him, and he certainly gets it. He's one of the few players who I think has cared this season. He showed the emotion throughout the game. I would be throwing the captaincy at him if I could, but realistically speaking, it's going to be Callum McGregor. Splencer, I think it might be pronounced, has asked, how much do you think Ajer and Edouard, Christie, Barkas, Calmac and anyone else could generate from sales given COVID uncertainty in the market and contract life? Well, out of the names there's 3 players out of the 5 given that I would expect to maybe leave. That's Edouard, that's Ajer and that's Christie. How much money do I expect us to generate from that? I would be saying, I'd be ambitious by saying 30 million. A lot of people are slapping £15 million price tags on Edouard and Ajer, saying that we're guaranteed to get that. I don't think there is any guarantee. We've got to be realistic about these things, guys. We can't be... I'm hoping that we get 15 million for both players, and if they had more in their contract, it certainly would be more than 15 million. These are 2 players who have a year left on their deals. They've got 1 year left. 15 million for Edouard and I, who've been playing as part of a Celtic team who are struggling, is going to be a big ask. We should be getting it, but I'm not so sure we will get the full 30 million. And then Christie, he's going to go for nothing. There's nothing there. His contract's up in December. He's free to speak to clubs this summer. So unless you get a new contract for him, which would imply that he would stay at the club, you're getting nothing for Ryan Christie. We've got to be optimistic to an extent that we've got to be realistic with the money that we are getting for these players. And it's got to be reinvested in the most wise and careful sense that we possibly can reinvest it. We've got to make the right signings. We can't repeat mistakes. Loan signings have to be made with the utmost confidence that they will supply for the wages that we will be paying. But these players that will bring on in permanent transfers, we're going to have to demand big signings. We're going to have to spend big money, which isn't ideal for a club like Celtic, but if we want to compete with Rangers next year, the hand has to go in the pocket, Dermot Desmond. And if we're getting 25 to 30 million for those guys, which I hope we do, all of it has got to be seen going towards new players. They've got to do it. Otherwise, I don't see any way of us catching Rangers if we don't reinvest. I'm hoping that Eddie Howe comes in. I'm hoping that a director of football comes alongside them with a list of names that they will be confident to work with and confident that can win titles. And then the conversation about challenging can begin, but we need to reinvest smart. I'll throw in a question from a Rangers fan here. Dave Cornish has asked, do you think that Celtic can challenge next season given the size of the rebuild job they need, or is it going to take more than one window? Well, I want it, from a Celtic fan point of view, from speaking from my heart, of course we can challenge for the title next season. But then when you sit down and you take your green tinted specs off and you've got to be realistic about it, this rebuild, it's going to be hard. Any rebuild in sports, no matter if it's football, basketball, American football, doesn't matter what it is, and especially we've seen it in football, rebuilds don't happen overnight. Things like this don't go with a click of the fingers. They can take time. And I have the utmost confidence because Eddie Howe is an incredibly good coach that he can take Celtic very far next season, but you've also got to weigh up the fact that we're going to lose so many players, the fact we've got so much to do, there's so much work to be done. There is a completely, like, we've changed from head to toe. You've got to remember this, the CEO is changing, the director of football is coming in, the manager is changing, the captain is changing, the backroom staff is changing. Will all of that changing in one season take us to the title next year? If you're looking at it with your head, it all leads to no, and Celtic fans need, and I urge Celtic fans to be patient. With my heart, I'm saying of course we can win the league next year, but when you look at it with your head, with how well Rangers have been playing this season, and how poorly Celtic have been playing this season, adding in a complete rebuild, it might be tougher than what everybody first thought it ever would be, and I've been saying that for a while. But people have got to manage their expectations. People have got to be patient next year. Matthew Duff asks which youth players are likely to make an impact in the first team next season, giving examples of Stephen Welsh, Karamoko Dembele, Luca Kono, Ewan Henderson, Scott Robertson, Leo Hjelde. These are all players who I want to see in the Celtic team at some point. How realistic can we be about them being starters for Celtic? Then, you know, maybe we will have, maybe if push comes to shove, they will need to start the games, and we can welcome that with open arms. But I think at the same time, you've got to realise that these kind of players, these younger guys, have got to be naturally brought into the squad over a period of time, but they've got to be given the right amount of time. They've got to be given minutes. They can't be brought on for 5 minutes every week, but there has to be certainly a development plan put in place. On the flip side of that, I don't see us in a position where we should be starting Stephen Welsh next season, for example. We need to improve. We need to sign players. But I want most of those guys. Leo Hjelde has been doing fantastic at Ross County. Luca Kono, ripping it up at Queen's Park. Yes, a League 2 side, but he's been doing really well. Scott Robertson gets a lot of praise. Ewan Henderson, someone who's been kind of knocking at the door for a long time. We're talking maybe even if you throw Sora in the equation, Karamoko Dembele, one of the most highly rated youngsters in Europe. All these players, they certainly need to get time next year. It's about, once again, managing the expectation of how much time they have, and being realistic with when it comes to quality in terms of challenging for a title, and then looking at the future. There's a lot of things to weigh up, but we certainly need to start the development process of getting them enough time in the team, because if you don't, it leaves you in a position where you are loaning them out. They don't want to sign contracts. We'll lose out and then they become stars. That's the sort of thing that happens. You look at clubs all over Europe like Ajax, the way that they naturally get players into the squad over time, it works perfectly, and we need to have a system in place similar to that to bring these players in, because we've not been doing it enough. Of course, we've had names like Kieran Tierney, and we've had names like Cal McGregor who've came up through our youth system and they've done well, but there's certainly too many names that we're not given the chances to. Is it just down to quality? I'll leave it up to you. Hatsune Miku CSC has asked, we're 23 points off Rangers and only 15 ahead of Hibs. If we bottle this summer badly, could you see us dropping down to third sometime in the next 3 or 4 years like Rangers did in 2016-17? I think that you've got to weigh up the two scenarios here. They are vastly different. I know that Celtic blew Rangers out the water that year when they won the league, but Rangers also were coming up from the Scottish Championship. Celtic should never realistically be in a position over the next year or two to be finishing third or fourth. I know this has been an extremely bad season, but by employing a top manager and by getting the right getting signings in that cost money, there's still players who should be better than the likes of Hibs and Aberdeen's. Celtic finishing third, of course, you can never say it's out the realms of possibility because everything is possible. But let's be realistic here. If we're going to be doing a bad season for Celtic over the next 2 years is finishing a mile behind Rangers in second place, I would be stunned, shocked, appalled, and just completely baffled if Celtic were to ever slip to third place in the coming years. I think it takes something kind of catastrophic, and you could say this season has been catastrophic, but then you're relying on the likes of Hibs and Aberdeen upping their game even more. You're saying about the gap there between Celtic and Hibs, that's still a big gap. Are Hibs good enough to close that? Maybe time will tell, but I think it would be a far cry. Jamie is asking what positions we need to improve in and we need to recruit in. This is the scary thing, I think, everywhere. I don't look at one area in the park where I'm like, you're okay, you're absolutely okay. Like, you don't need anybody. We need a goalkeeper, we certainly need a right back, we need a centre half, I think we need another left back, we need wingers, we need centre midfielders, in my opinion. I know we've got Sorrow, McGregor, and we've got a depth of young players there, but I feel like we are going to need a little bit of maybe of experience in the middle, so we need centre midfielders. I think we need more creativity, and we certainly need a striker. Everywhere needs improved. It is very scary when you look at how much potential we need. Now, I'm not saying we need to absolutely get 11 different players in every position. I'm not saying that. If you prioritise the ones that are more important, then the team will start to come together and you won't need to worry as much. but we certainly need to look at every area as a place to strengthen. That's the mentality we have to have here. Marcus is asking, if we were to get Eddie Howe, do you think he needs to win his title in the first season, or is it bust? Considering how bad this year has been and the mentality that Celtic and Celtic fans have, no, I don't think he needs to win the title next year. Of course, we've got to prioritise winning the title, and we should be aiming to win the title. I'm not saying we shouldn't be, but we have to understand, and I can't urge this enough, fans need to be patient with the size of this rebuild. There cannot be an expectation to just go and win the league like that. I know this year people have been criticising a lot of the fans, especially fans like myself's mindset that we should be winning it and all the rest of it. Of course we should be, because we should be going to challenge, but it's the way that we've lost it this year has been more frustrating than actually losing it. Next year, Celtic need to be in a strong position to challenge, but if we don't win it, if Eddie Howe doesn't win it in his first season, I think to kind of erase all the work of a high-class appointment like him would make no sense unless it's an unmitigated disaster like Lennon. We need to manage our patience next season and understand that this is the biggest rebuild the club's got to go through. I can't think of any rebuilds in my lifetime or even before that have been bigger than the one ahead of us. We need to be patient. And the final question of today's episode, the Celtic fan group is asking, how much money do you think Celtic will spend altogether in this window? A very difficult question, because we need to spend big. And as I said already, you've got to reinvest that £30 million. Every penny of it, that's got to be spent. So off the top of your head, you're looking at the 30 you bring in there. If it comes in, perhaps even more money, you're expecting the club, I think we're all expecting the club to maybe spend 30-40 million pounds. Is that realistically going to happen? Once again, you've got to manage your expectations. I think we've got to be ready for a fall that might not be the case. Is Dermot Desmond going to be willing to do that? I don't think so. Especially after the year that Celtic have had financially. I think that he'll be wanting to keep some money to the side and make sure the well of the club is still there. It's so difficult to judge how things will go in terms of spending money this year because of what the world's been through. But we need to spend 30 or 40 million because we need to improve this squad. So it's a weird one. I can't even give a rough ballpark because the way that Celtic have been in the past with transfers and recruitment, and the way that Dermot Desmond has been with spending money, it could be anywhere around £3 million, but it could also be anywhere in the realm of 20 odd million, 30 odd million, because we need to, and he'll understand we need to. You hope, but it could be out the other end. So you don't know. It's weird. It's got to be tough, man. And that does it. That's the video. That's all the questions that I can get through for today's one. This is 20 minutes I've been talking for here, so I'm going to wrap it up. If you have enjoyed it and you want to see more of that, then please let me know and I'll make sure to do more of these in the future. It is good to get your guys' opinions and views and questions on the channel. If it's not live, then through a video or whatnot. So let me know if you want to see more of it. I loved it. And if your question didn't feature, I'm so sorry, but we had tons to get through. So thank you. Let me know your thoughts. Like and subscribe. And I'll see you all next time.